Greetings everyone. Welcome to the Consulting Bootcamp by ifsa-network BITS Pilani. IFSA's vision is to create an international network of finance and consulting enthusiasts, empowering them and carving future leaders out of them. The BITS Pilani chapter started in 2020 by a group of BITSians who wanted to create a good culture and experience for finance and consulting enthusiasts who wanted to actually apply the theoretical knowledge they learned into real-world problems. This consulting session will be hosted by Aryan Verma, President of IFSA BITS Pilani, Kushagra Dhar, Consulting Director, and me, Shreya Gupta, a Senior Consultant at IFSA BITS Pilani. We have worked on several live consulting projects. In this consulting session, we will go over some basics of problem solving and different frameworks required for the same. The session includes topics like resume building for a consulting profile, structuring questions from the problem statement and frameworks required for the same, hypothesis formation and synthesis. We will also be taking up an interactive case study which will help you use all the frameworks. This will give you good practical knowledge and will give you an idea on how to apply these frameworks correctly. We will also be providing some of the best sources for consulting preparation for beginners. With this session, we want to give you a head start in the world of consulting and upskill you for requirements and eventually working with us in a fast-paced, high-level environment. We start with Introduction to Consulting as a domain. Consulting is a professionally prestigious field of work involving constant intellectual simulation. Consultancy firms are considered desirable places to work with students attracted to the promise of interesting, challenging, and diverse work, as well as the opportunity for early and substantial career progression. As a consultant, one helps organizations solve business problems, improve performance, and create value by strategizing solutions and providing recommendations to management of the organizations. The work that you do as a consultant is pretty varied across projects ranging from marketing, supply chain management, business development to strategy, data analysis, product development, and financial analysis. Some of the well-known big firms include McKinsey, Boston Consulting Group, Bain & Company, Deloitte, and KPMG. Some smaller specialized firms also exist which cater to specific industries. These are called as boutique consulting firms. Consulting is a strong springboard to many other careers and provides great exit opportunities as well. As a top-tier consultant, you gain experience working across lots of different sectors and functions, and this variety means you often have relevant and transferable skills for many different types of industries and roles. Some of the exit opportunities that consulting provides include business schools like Harvard and Wharton, entrepreneurship, product management, business development, and strategy roles at large organizations, and private equity and venture capital firms. We now move on to talking about consulting opportunities in India and abroad. As a consultant, your reward is directly linked to your brain power. It's a field for quick thinkers, people who are solution-oriented and who have good people skills. It's an excellent field if you're looking for job satisfaction and remuneration. All the international consulting firms have offices in India, so the opportunities are vast. Some active recruiting firms in India include Zinnov and CS. Usually the consultants are either recruited out of the top business schools or are promoted from analysts and associates. Being in BITS, you have a great opportunity to get recruited early on into the top consulting firms as associates. The first round for consulting firms is mostly the resume shortlist round, followed by a case interview and a fit interview. I'll now be talking about how to build your profile and resume for a consulting firm. Your CV or your resume should be able to tell your story to the recruiters and the impact you had being a part of any club, department, organization, and internships. These firms generally look for a minimum of 2 to 3 spikes in your resume. A spike is anything that the interviewer will remember you by. What is your story? What do you care about? It's best if you just don't say that I'm passionate about XYZ, but can back it up with past experience. It can be academics in the form of high CG publications, work experience in the form of internships and your role in the company, leadership in the form of positions of responsibility and the impact that you created during your tenure, social, cultural, sports, and communication skills. Besides personal, leadership, problem solving, and quantitative skills, consulting companies look for an overall orientation towards achievement and impact. We'll now talk about using the STAR method to create your resume. By a method called as STAR, you can create a resume that shows your value as a job candidate. This method allows you to match your skills to job qualifications by pairing your work experience with relevant examples. STAR is an acronym for the four parts of an answer: situation, task, action, and result. This method helps you tell a story and allows you to present a narrative of how your work experience has shaped who you are. Starting with the situation, you describe the context and the nature of a problem or issue that you faced. Then you move on to the task, where you describe the task and the different steps that needed to be taken. You then talk about the actions. You relate what you actually did. What skills did you apply to solve the issue? Describe the time frame if relevant and other details to help the readers see you in action. How did you contribute to your team's effort? And at the end, you talk about the result. What was the result of your action? Try to quantify the results wherever possible. For example, let's say that you worked with an NGO to help them organize a charity event. Instead of writing that you worked with an NGO to organize an event, you can talk about the result and impact the particular event had. In this case, the situation is that you were working for an NGO. The task was to organize a charity event. The action was that you organized it, and the result was that the event raised more than $10,000, which further helped to fund the education of 20 children. So when you put it in your resume in the STAR format, you put it as organized NGO philanthropy events resulted in contributions exceeding $10,000 that helped fund the education of 20 students. This way, you will be able to talk directly about the impact that you had in your role. Ultimately, the STAR method is an excellent guideline that should guide not only how you communicate your experiences on your resume, but also as a structure for speaking about the experiences during your interview. It will drive the conversation in a favorable direction and will make a strong positive impact on the interviewer if executed correctly. Some of the things that you need to keep in mind while making your resume are that you need to focus on the impact that you had in a particular role in a club, department, or organization. You should keep your resume crisp. It should not exceed more than one page. You should not lie on your resume because it's very easy to see through lies on your resume for the interviewer. And you should not write in the first person. Instead, you should start the sentences with verbs. I will now pass it on to Aryan.
Now you know what consulting is, what consultants do, the opportunity there is out there, and how to build a resume for the same. But now comes the main part of being a consultant. One needs to know how to break down problem statement and have a structured problem-solving methodology. Now this is ingrained in your brain, but having a format, having a structure to do this results in efficiency, which will actually help you with your consulting projects later on in life. So there are some steps to structure a problem. The first one being you need to define the problem in form of a question. Now, as a consultant, in case competitions or anywhere you're trying to figure out a solution to a problem, there will be a problem statement, which will be a situation, which will always be able to be defined in the form of a question. A consultant would be required to answer this question and eventually solve the problem. Now, the whole process is going to be explained in this presentation, but right now we need to focus on how to structure a problem. So always try to think of a problem in a form of a question and then branch out multiple questions from it. So the second step is to break down the question into sub-questions. There is a problem statement, you formed a question out of it, and now you keep asking yourself different questions based on the previous question that you made. So by this, you'll have a pyramid sort of structure with multiple branches. So the ideology behind this is that one needs to think top to bottom and implement bottom to up. Even if you're a developer, it's the same way. Like when you have a problem and you want to develop a code for it, you actually break the problem down into small chunks and develop code for each, and then combine it in form of a solution. Similarly, you need to think top to bottom, structure the problem from in a top to bottom way, and then start implementing from the bottom. Now, the more questions you can think of, the better the overall solution you're going to come up with, because the more aspects of the problem you're going to consider. Now, the problem here is that when you're making multiple branches, and if you're not following a particular framework called MEC, which I'll tell you about later, there will be multiple redundancies in the branches. There will be a lot of branches. You're going to be confused what to do. There will be multiple questions, and you won't know where you're headed. And this is an actual problem that we as consultants face in projects as well. This is because when we're branching the problems, we're not prioritizing the branches that are most important. How you do this? There will be multiple branches to a problem, but there will be some branches. If you find a solution to those, you'll eventually indirectly solve the other ones as well. So prioritization is based on the branch which is linked to everything. So you need to find this branch which is most connected to other ones, and then try to solve that first, and then solve the other branches. Now, a very good framework to tackle this problem is the MEC framework. So as you know that we had multiple branches and which were repeating, overlapping with each other. So to avoid that, we need to create the branches, we need to create the questions in an MEC way. We need to think in an MEC way. So what MEC is, it basically stands for mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive ideology of thinking. So it's an excellent way to structure problems. Like while structuring problems, it is a good practice to like group and branch and categorize questions in an MEC way. This would help to avoid redundancy and overlapping. Now, what the hell do I mean by this? You can see in the visualizations, these boxes, right? These boxes in triangles, these squares and triangles. So think of these as separate questions that you've created for a problem. And these questions, you can see, all of these are not overlapping with each other. All of these are separate polygons. So this is because these polygons, these questions are mutually exclusive. Now, when we want to cover the whole subset of the problem statement, we try to join them, but we don't want them to overlap. We just want to join them and create a whole set which will cover the whole problem statement. So that is when this mutually exclusive set of questions become collectively exhaustive as well, as they're covering the whole set of problem statement. Now, this is a visual depiction of it, but you'll understand it better if I explain to you via examples. So a non-MEC example would be grouping people based on hobbies. Now, a person can have multiple hobbies, right? So when you're grouping based on hobbies, your hobbies being your primary key to map to people, you know that two hobbies can map to one person. This is just like freedom function, X and Y. 2X will be mapped to Y, it won't be a function, right? So similarly, a person can have multiple hobbies. So grouping by hobbies might lead to redundancies and non-mutually exclusive mappings. Now, an MEC way to group people would be by age, as a person won't have multiple ages. So when you're grouping by age, every age will map to a different person. Two ages cannot map to a single person. So this is a mutually exclusive way of grouping. Now, if you if you make a union of all these mappings, it's going to be a collectively exhaustive set. So this is what I meant by mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive framework of thinking. Now, using this aspect in the business side, everyone knows the statement profit equals to revenue minus cost. So this is basically depicting the whole profit scenario in a mutually exclusive, collectively exhaustive way. How? So to maximize profits, you can either focus on increasing the revenue or decreasing the cost. Revenue and cost cannot overlap with each other. You can either increase the revenue, you can decrease the cost, or you can do both together. But these both are not related to each other. These both are independent pillars of increasing profit. So this is an MEC example in the business side of things. So our progress till now is we know how to structure problems. We know how to structure problems efficiently using the MEC framework. And now what comes? Finding answers to the problems and creating a hypothesis. So to create a hypothesis, you need to know what exactly it is and how to think when you're creating a hypothesis. So it's basically combining problems, questions, and their answers. After assessing all the questions, one needs to prioritize which questions you'd like to focus on. And this was discussed in the last couple of slides as well, right? Now you'd like to focus on and find the answers to develop a hypothesis on. So the consulting definition is very simple. It's basically your educated guess to what you think would be the answer to your client's problem and why you think so. But the methodology is a bit tricky. Now, while forming a hypothesis, there are three things to keep in mind. One is the event which is causing the observable phenomena. So you decide the phenomena. The observable phenomena is the second part, and the third is the event that will be caused by the observable phenomena. Now, I know you won't understand this without an example, so here are some examples for the same. So there is a statement, a hypothesis: by reducing variable costs, we can establish profitability and revive the company. Now, see how the three aspects of hypothesis come into play. The observable phenomena is the thing you want to do is you want to establish profitability. So how will you establish profitability? That is the event which will cause the observable phenomena by reducing variable cost. And now, what will this do? What will be the implication? That will be the event caused by the observable phenomena. That is the to revive the company. So by reducing variable cost, we can establish profitability and revive the company. In the second statement, you'll be more clear about it. Like high level of competition is restricting market entry, which is hindering expansion of the company. You see how the hypothesis is broken down into three aspects. One is what is happening, the observable phenomena, restriction of market entry. Now, what is causing it? High level of competition. What is the result of this? This is hindering the expansion of the company. So this is how you form hypothesis and how you elaborate things to the client. And even while solving case competitions, this is how you come to the conclusion and create hypothesis. So these things are very important to keep in mind while forming or reading or assessing or analyzing hypothesis. That is the event which will cause the observable phenomena, and the event caused by the observable phenomena. So now you also know how to create hypothesis, you know how to structure problems, you know a lot now. But now you need to know the main thing which will ease out the whole process and make your problem structuring to hypothesis formation to basically giving the conclusion a very efficient way. This is the SEQA framework. So what exactly this is? Now the whole process of assessing the problem, breaking it down into structured questions, finding the answers to those and creating a hypothesis can be done efficiently by keeping SEQA framework in mind. What it is? S is situation, C complication, question and answer. So the situation tells about what exactly is happening and what is the context of the problem. Like any business problem will obviously have a situation. It's pretty intuitive. It tells us about the current state and the observable phenomena. So what exactly is happening? Now comes the complication. So this is usually clubbed with the question. You'll see in the case that we're going to demonstrate afterwards. So the complication represents the change in situation, the problem that came in the situation and something going wrong. So it basically talks about the impact of the situation. Now, like in a lot of case competitions, in a lot of projects, actual life projects, you'll see that the situation and complication, when you club them together, they form the problem statement. And what do we know till now? What do we do to the problem statement? We break down the problem statement into questions. So comes the third aspect, question. It's about analyzing the problem statement and figuring out how the hurdles of complication can be solved. Now, usually the driving question is always hidden in the complication. When you know what's complicated, you obviously know the main question, which is to be solved. So that is pretty intuitive. And if you remember from what we discussed last time in the last couple of slides, like the thinking and the breaking down process is a top to down process, and the implementation part is bottoms up. The diagram tells you a similar thing. Like you're going to structure, you're going to create the hypothesis from top to bottom, but you're going to back it and you're going to create solutions. And you're going to research and analyze and come up with the answers by using a bottom to top approach. So this is basically a reiteration of what we discussed. Now you know how to assess problems, how to structure it down into questions, how to create hypotheses, and the main framework that applies to do that efficiently. So you have all the theoretical knowledge now, but I know this might have been a bit mentally exhausting and you will get bored if we don't tell you the application of it. So this is the time where we tell you how exactly all of this is going to be applied with a profitability case, which Kushagra is going to take up next. So Kushagra, on to you.
Thanks, Aryan. Hello, everyone. So I believe Aryan has done a fantastic job in explaining how to structure problem, how to think in a very structured manner and a logical manner, and then approach the solution. So I will be taking up a profitability case wherein it is a very common type of problem that you come across in several case competition, case interview, wherein your client is seeing declining profits or facing losses, and you need to first identify the reason that it is facing such a decline and then come up with a solution. And of course, I will be using all the frameworks like MACE and SCQA and all those buzzwords that you have come across. I'm sure it might be overwhelming if you are hearing it for the first time, but to be honest, it's really extremely logical, and while solving problems, we actually do it at a very subconscious level. Like I'm sure in your JE days, you must have tackled those challenging mechanics problems, and to answer those structurally, you always used to first draw a free body diagram, then identify the forces, then write down the equations, and then arrive at a solution. So solving this case, you will see that we are also using a similar structured manner. And so moving on, let's try to look at the case and try to solve it. Okay, so one thing, like before I start solving the case, I expect this to be a bit interactive, as I will be trying to solve it along with you. So if you guys have any opinion, any ideas, any questions, any doubts, please feel free to interrupt me or type it down in your chat, in the chat. Okay. So anyway, moving on. So the problem statement is this, that our client is a leading manufacturer of tires. It has witnessed a decline in profit for the past 5 years, and we need to help him figure out the root cause and find the way to turn around the situation. Right. So let's look at the problem statement first. So we know who our client is, right? It's a tire manufacturer, and so this can be termed as a situation. The complication can be that it is witnessing declining profits for the past 5 years, and we need to help them figure out the reason behind it. So these are the key things that we need to focus on. Now coming on to it, moving on. First of all, you need to understand that what we are presenting is in the form of case studies. This is a common format you come across if you take part in case competitions, wherein all the information about your client or about the case is given, and based on the given information, you need to solve and come up with a solution. But in case interviews and all, you are expected to ask the interviewer to get these answers. Right. So anyway, so first important information that we know is that it produces mainly for passenger vehicles, and it has basically two types of tires, type A and type B, and both basically differ on the basis of the grip. So this is a very important information, as we get to know what its products are, right? And also like who its target audience is, or basically to whom they manufacture. So this is a very important piece of information. Then moving on, the client manufactures the tires and sells them to distributors around the country. So with this, we get to know the value chain and the business model. So basically, the client is going to manufacture the tires and then sell them to the distributors. And to the distributors, it's going to reach the prospective customers. Right. So another important thing, the tire market is fairly competitive. There are several competitors relying on similar distribution network, and they have not seen any similar decline in profits. So that's again a very, very important piece of information. So the tire market is fairly competitive. That means that we don't have much control over price points, because it's extremely competitive. And if we try to increase the price points in a way to increase our profits, it will actually decline the number of units sold. Krish, I'll get to that. I'm just like first explaining the questions. I will get to it. Right. So this is why we don't have much control over the price points. The next part is that the competitors have not been seeing a decline in profit. So that implies that basically implies that this is not an industry situation, as in like it may not be because suddenly the raw material costs have gone up, or let's say due to some recession, people are not buying cars, therefore the tire sales have declined, because then the competitors would have also faced a very similar situation. Since the competitors are not in a similar situations, we need to look internally. That is, there is something wrong with our client, and we need to rectify that. Right. Another piece of information is that there has been some R&D, research and development work in product type A, resulting in an increased durability of a tire. That is, we are now getting a superior quality of product because of some research and development work that had taken place. Right. And finally, the improved quality was marketed well and received well by the customers. So that means that the the company did an excellent job in developing their new set of tire, and the customers are extremely satisfied with the product. And as a result, there might not be some issues in the quality control level, at least at the production level. So I believe that's the case. Let's see if we have any questions. The problem might be that they have limited only passenger vehicle. So Chidmay, when I said competitor analysis, it meant that all the competitors are also focusing on the passenger vehicles, right? So that's why. So that's why I don't think limited market presence is the only reason. At least the passenger vertical is, I think, doing well. So at least the profitability shouldn't decline. Right. So anyway, distributors might not be satisfied with the company. Well, that might definitely be a possibility, but that might be the reason you need to look internally and ask, like, what might be the reason for that. So another question is like, what is the cost of production of tire types? Are both? So Yuvraj, this is the additional data we have, and I will be explaining it right now. Good question. Aditya, Manpreet asked, so what does a solution look like? Right. So Manpreet, first we need to understand why the profits are declining. We first need to identify the reason behind it and then come up with a solution. And developing a new product line can be a solution, and we will come to it. Amay, yeah, we will get to it. It's good that you are trying to analyze the situation, and we will look at both the products separately to come across the solution. Right, Rahul, we will think about it, we will reach there. Right, Devesh, we are not taking inflation into consideration. Yeah, inflation could be definitely be taken into account, and we are assuming that the profits are real and not nominal. So anyway, I'll now just proceed with another additional data we have. So this is the data, like we are assuming that from 2015 to 2020 decline, we are seeing a decline. So in 2015 and 20, the price has been same, but quantity sold of type A has decreased. So this is again a very important piece of information, and this is something that we need to analyze later on. Another thing that we need to note that the production cost per unit of type A has increased. Right. Aryan, previous slide, please. Right. So this is one thing that we need to look at for type A. Type B, we have seen that quantity sold has increased by at least 3 times. There is a 200% increase. So that means type B is being well received. So this is a very good sign. And the price and the production cost hasn't changed, has remained flat. Anyway, let's now try to understand it let's now try to solve it as we have now looked at the data. So let's now, I think best way to go forward is the MECE framework. Right, so MECE framework, we need to divide profit into revenue and cost because both are mutually exclusive and collectively exhaustive. So after doing a revenue side analysis, type A, the revenue was 1,000 million. The numbers are in millions. Okay, so type A had 1,000 million, and in 2020 it declined to 600 million. And that main reason is going to be because the number of units sold has decreased, as we have seen in the previous slide. In type B, the revenue has become triple because the number of units sold has also become triple. And while doing cost side analysis, we come to know that the cost of type A has decreased because number of units being sold has decreased. So as a result, So as a result, the total cost has decreased. In type B, the total cost has increased 3 times because number of units have being sold have tripled. So moving on. So these are the initial inferences. As I've discussed, the revenues has increased by 200% for type B and 40% by type A, and 3.3% increase in price for type A. Lastly, just one more minute, I am previous slide. Yeah, so lastly, let's look at another important thing. What are the profit margins? So profit margins are, if you don't know, is basically profits divided by cost. So basically it implies the profit you make by the sale of a product, of a single unit of product. So lower margin, so higher margin would mean that the more units you sell, you will make a higher amount of profit as opposed to a product with lower margin. Like luxury goods is the best example because they have extremely high margins, but therefore, like even if less number of units are sold, because the margin is high, they can make huge profits as opposed to a low margin product. So one thing you know that type A has a very high margin, which is like 66.67%. It has decreased because the cost has increased because I guess because of the new developed a new superior product. But the type B has a very low margin of just 12.5%. This is again an important piece of information because for higher margin products, if sale decrease, profitability is going to hit us harder as opposed to lower sale of a type B product. Right. So let's move on to the next slide. Right. So now let's break down the profits and revenue. So basically the total revenue we calculated was 1450 and in 2020 is 1950. So this is again a good sign. That means the revenue has increased, but the cost has also increased by a much more margin as opposed to 2015. So this means that so this basically means that even though revenues has increased, and one of the main reason for the increase in revenue is can be attributed to the higher amount of sale of type A, type B, but because of lower sales of type A, the profitability has declined. So anyway, so let's look at the profits. So type A profits has declined in 2015. It was 400 and 2020 is 228. Type B it was 50 in 2015 and in 2020 it's 150. So total in 2015 is 450 profits and in 2020 it's 372 million. So that basically essentially summarizes the situation, right? So now we need to like really ask the pertinent questions as to why this is happening, why are we witnessing this phenomena, and that's when we actually apply the frameworks. So let's now apply the good old SCQA. So let's first understand what was the S. So situation has been well defined in question, in the question wherein we know it's a manufacturer, we know its value chain, we know its products, we know everything about it. We know the complication, which is declining profits. Now the questions we need to ask, and first question is very basic, like why are profits declining? So that's like the top of the pyramid question, and we need to now break it down into further subparts. The first question is why are profits declining? It is clear that the revenue is increasing, right? Because profit is revenue minus cost, but the cost is increasing much more, right? And also the profits of type B has increased, but profit of type A has decreased. We have seen all that while doing our calculations, right? So this is the answer to the question. Now, the next question should be, why is the cost increasing of type A, right? So that's mainly one of the main question that you need to ask, because that's the only reason why the cost side is increasing. So first, let's divide cost into again two factors, fixed cost and variable cost, right? Because that's again according to the MISI framework, because cost can be either fixed or variable. So what are fixed costs? So fixed costs are basically those costs which is not, it is independent of the amount of goods you produce, right? So if you are running a factory, these are the costs you need to pay irrespective of whether you are producing or not. Like one of the fixed costs can be salaries of fixed employees. So the salaries of fixed employees you need to pay even if you are not producing anything, even if the factory is shut down, right? Infrastructure, the cost of factory equipment, etc. All these come under fixed cost. R&D cost, marketing cost, taxes, everything come under fixed cost. Variable costs include raw materials, labor, packaging, utilities, transportation. So these actually are dependent on number of goods you produce, right? So if you produce more goods, you need more raw materials. So your raw material cost is going to increase. Similarly, labor, packaging, transportation, etc. So there has to be an increase in cost in at least one such components, because again, due to MECE framework, since cost is increasing, so either fixed cost is increasing or variable cost is increasing, and that's what something we need to identify. So the question first can be, have the variable cost been increasing, right? So in this, we again have to ask sub questions like, is the raw material cost increasing? Is the labor cost increasing? Is the packaging cost increasing? So it's very unlikely that the raw material cost or these variable costs are increasing, because there might be several reasons for it. One reason can be that if raw material costs had been increasing, then in all likelihood it would have reflected in the cost of production of type B, right? Or similarly for labor costs, packaging costs. Also the competitors who are also having the same distributor network, almost the same, working almost in the same market, would also have faced these issues. So therefore, it's very unlikely that the variable costs are increasing, right? So the next question is the fixed cost increasing? Because if variable costs are not increasing, then definitely it has to be fixed cost. And if it is fixed cost, then which component is actually increasing, right? So since we need to now look at all these separately, first could definitely be salaries of employees, infrastructure, R&D, marketing, and taxes. But since we are looking at the increase in cost of type A, the most common thing that changed was the cost of the R&D cost and the marketing cost, because of developing the superior product, marketing it, reaching out to customers, all these things. Due to this, it's highly likely that the fixed cost of the product A has increased, right? So this is the main thing that we need to understand, right? So moving on. So now the question is, and I'm sure everybody is asking this, like, if that's the case, then shouldn't revenue for type A increase because the customers are happy, we have a better quality product, we have excellent customer satisfaction, we have spent a lot in R&D, reaching out to customers, all such stuff, right? So this is probably the root cause of the problem, because as you see, what the R&D did was that the durability of the product increased, right? So the tire is now excellent. It means the restocking time of the product decreased. It didn't need to be replaced very easily. Like for if a normal tire took 4 years to replace it, it was so durable that it took them 8 years to replace. So as a result, the sales have decreased because customers are satisfied with the product, so they don't need to buy more units. So as a result, there is a sharp decline in the sale of type A, and that I believe can be the root cause of the problem. So that's how, like, I think we have come across a solution of this case. But let me tell you, this is just one way to approach the solution. There can be several ways, and there could also be several other problems. The point is you have to reach there logically. Like someone raised the problem of distributors, right? So distributors can again be a factor, like distributor incentives, like maybe the distributor are not doing properly marketing, but we have to take into account the data in hand, and the data in hand suggested that we need to look at R&D. So that's possibly the main root cause of the problem. So anyway, so now moving on, these are the possible recommendations. And if you guys feel that we can do something else as well, if the root cause of the problem is that we have a better product and due to which people are not restocking it, please feel free to share your opinion. So anyway, so these are the possible solutions that we can think of. One is, of course, that one big advantage now we have is that we have a new, well-differentiated, superior product. So that gives us an edge over our competitors. So this way we can rebrand our product, right? Another thing that I have again mentioned, and one thing that I need to again emphasize on, is that we really need to look at margins of both the products. So the margins of product A is much, much, much more than that of product B, right? So if we are able to just even marginally improve the sales of product A, it's going to help us a lot by it's going to impact profitability in a much more bigger manner. So that's one thing we need to focus on, right? So one thing can definitely be rebranding it and getting a competitive advantage, improving our market share and capturing new customer base, getting new distributors. That's again one of the key things we need to focus on. The second is, of course, increasing the price, because since we have a well differentiated product, we have some control over the price, right? And definitely, another thing can be the numbers game, wherein we give discounts on packs of 4, 10, 100. So this way we can entice buyers to buy this product. And this way also, since the margins of we can even afford some discount, and that's going to again help in selling number of in increasing the number of units of type A that is being sold. Another factor that another thing that we can do is a discount on combined sales of both type A and type B. So this is again another thing that we can do. So these are, I guess, the recommendations that we have. So anyway, moving on. So this is basically the conclusion of our case. So the situation was this: a leading vehicle tire manufacturer operating in an extremely competitive market. The complications where profits have been declining in the past 5 years. The questions that arise are: why are we seeing this decline in profits? How do we increase the profitability? The answers are: the reason for decline in profit is because of decline in sales of a high margin product due to higher replacement time as a result of product improvement. So that's basically what happened. The type A had a higher margin, but the sales declined because replacement time increased. So the profitability will increase by rebranding type A and incentivizing its sales. So these are the answers for how we can increase the profitability. So rebranding is one thing, incentivizing the sales is great. Looking for opportunities in new markets and distribution channels can also be a solution. So this actually, I think, concludes the case.
So yeah, Kushabro, I guess that was a very action-packed, elaborate session for you guys. I hope you guys took a lot from it, and coming from the methodologies for problem solving to the life case to the introduction and context to consulting. I hope this session was valuable for all of you. Now we're open to questions on the case and on the whole session as a whole. So Kushabro, Shreya, and I are up to take the questions if you guys have any. Yeah. Yeah, Aryan, you've raised your hand.
The like in the case study that we just discussed, we learned about rebranding as a possible solution. So my question is that if we just because we discussed rebranding recently, but not recently, about 3 years back, Reynolds was rebranded as Rorito, right?
Yeah, Rorito, yeah.
So my question is, if we consider hypothetically that Reynolds was facing a problem in sales, so it was announced that Reynolds will be rebranded as Rorito. So how does it help in increasing the sales of the product?
I think I'll try to answer it. It actually varies from case to case basis. What is your product? So rebranding depends on how you are rebranding. So I will talk to you in this case specifically. The reason we are rebranding is that we can differentiate the product. If we are able to differentiate it product, like we can say that this product is superior than those common products that you see. So this way, customers get attracted because they can see that they have a superior product. So that's an advantage of rebranding. Another advantage of rebranding is that you can like increase the price, right? Because now since you have rebranded it and you can show the customer that it is different, so you have something different to offer. Like branding is very important. Like the cases of luxury goods, the thing that separates a normal watch and a Rolex watch is definitely the brand. Of course, quality is superior, but the fact that it is Rolex makes it a huge makes a huge difference. So that I believe is the advantage in this case.
Also, adding to what Kushagro said, rebranding is not about just renaming the company or something. It's more about creating a new corporate image for the company, which can set it apart from its competitors. So, in that case, also, rebranding can be very useful for a company. Yeah, Krish, please go ahead with your question. I hope that answers your question, Aryan.
Yes, thank you.
I just wanted to know one thing, that in this case, as we saw, the solution seems apt, but at the same time, we could see from the data that the sales of type B was increasing as well. So if it was only due to the R&D cost, then why is type B increasing? I mean, isn't there some other trend in the market as well, because of which type B is increasing and the sales of type A might be going down?
No, actually, it depends. To directly answer your question, the reason for type B can be that companies performing very well. Its distribution channels have improved. It is capturing more markets, and that's why it has tripled, right? So that might be a reason. And in terms of R&D cost was taken into consideration for developing type A, right? Type B was what it was 5 years back, 10 years back. It was giving the same amount of grip, same kind of durability, right? So that's why. And another additional cost is the marketing cost, right? Because they are now marketing it to the customers, reaching it out to them, right? So that's why you will see that the production cost of type A has increased and not of type B. I hope that answers your question.
Okay, but also in this solution, wouldn't rebranding the Type A tires again increase the marketing cost? As if it's rebranded, you'll again need to go through the whole procedure of marketing it.
Yeah. It might be included, but what you need to understand is that after that we are now increasing the price, right? Because now we have control over the price point after that. Because that's the one thing that we suggested after
And for
rebranding.
the same purpose, like you thought about this, it's great to know. But for the same purpose, we have a procedure called cost benefit analysis, which we do for each of our recommendations. So after solving the case, after creating recommendations and conclusions, we actually go to the implementation part of the problem. And that's when we do these analysis, cost benefit analysis of what we've recommended. So that is when this comes into play, whether it would actually work or not work. Also, we'll be taking like another question, and after that, we're gonna conclude it with some tips and the next steps, and discuss the next steps for the IFSA recruitment drive. So I guess Janam was first. Janam, you can say.
Yes, thank you. I had two questions. First of all, what a possible solution in this case would be that we could reintroduce the pre-R&D Type A tires as a new Type C tires with lower selling price, and make the Type A tires a premium quality tire to make its market image and then increase its price.
So that's a good solution you've come across. Yeah, so that can be a possibility of going back to type A, but there can be several other complications as to what if, since developing the type A product, we have bought new equipment, we have changed the equipment, we might have changed the production process, and to go back to the basics, it might be difficult. But yes, that
Right.
can be a possible solution.
Okay. And the second question was that I am not sure if it's really a question, but these R&D costs, do they stick around after a new product has been started manufacturing, or they are one-time costs?
Like R&D can be recurring costs, so like it varies from industry to industry. So what we basically do is that they assume that R&D cost can be converted into an asset for like a couple of years, right?